Welcome to the Virtual Expats Podcast. In the podcast, we interview expats or former expats on how changing locations changed what they did online. In the podcast episode, we're interviewing documentarian Hao Wu. On Valentine's Day this year, my husband and I went to the Shanghai Foreign Correspondents Club screening of People's Republic of Desire, one of Hao's most recent projects. Yes, we really are that romantic. Also at the event was Shannon Martin, who works for Podbean and also is our local host for the podcast Brunch Club. We all talked incessantly for the next few days after this screening, and that's when we decided that Shannon and I needed to interview Hao, and he was kind enough to agree to this interview. Hao has a very interesting background. He's lived both in China and in the US, and is currently living in New York City, and he calls himself binational. And I think as you listen to his geographical trajectory during the interview, you'll agree that binational seems to be a very, very fair label to how he splits up his time between the two places. Hao's career is equally as interesting. He started out in the tech field working for a number of high-profile companies, including but not limited to Alibaba here in China. The People's Republic of Desire is a documentary following two live streamers in the ups and downs of their live streaming experiences. Specifically, these two live streamers are on the YY platform in China, and there's a large focus on the YY yearly competition. This is a slightly different type of interview. We are talking about Hao's geographical trajectory and his own online experience and how they affect each other, but we also talk about his documentary, People's Republic of Desire. One final note on Hao. Hao has another project coming out on May 3rd in just a few days from now, and it will come out on Netflix. It's called All in My Family, and it is about living one's true identity in the face of a traditional family values, and I'll have a link in the show notes for the trailer for that. All right, so without further ado, let's get to the conversation between Shannon, Hao, and myself. Thank you so much, Hao and Shannon, for joining us on Virtual Expats Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here too.
This is the first time we're doing two interviewers with one interviewee on the Virtual Expat Podcast. So let's do a quick round. We'll do the interviewers first. Hi, I'm Stephanie, a long-term serial expat and someone who's curious about what our geographic movement does to our online presence and activities.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I currently live in Shanghai, China. I've been here almost 7 years, originally from the US, and have lived in a couple of different continents. So love cross-cultural stuff and this podcast, and very interested, of course, in China and things going on here. So I'm very interested in this interview. And I work in the podcasting industry. I work for Podbean, so love all things podcasting as well.
And Shannon is also our local host for the podcast Brunch Club. I have to plug them every chance I get because they're wonderful. And our special guest today is Hao Wu. Hao?
Hi, this is Hao. I'm a documentary filmmaker based in New York. I'm originally from China. Strangely, even though I live in New York, I still primarily focus on China stories in my documentary films.
We generally map out in expat, and we use that term very, very loosely. Basically, anybody who lives outside their home country or passport country, whatever you want to call it. And we map out their geographical movement, in this case, China to the US and back and forth and back and forth, and what that does to their online presence. So with that, the first question, as a binational, Hao, you spent a lot of time in both China and the US. Can you briefly give our listeners a chronological snapshot of when and how long you were in each place?
Okay, so I'm in my 40s. I moved to the US when I was 20 for graduate school. And then after graduate school, I went to another graduate school. And after that, I worked in Silicon Valley for many years. And then after that, I moved back to China. I worked for companies like Alibaba, Yahoo China, and TripAdvisor in China. And at the end of 2011, I quit my tech career to focus on documentary filmmaking full-time. So before then, I was dabbling in documentary filmmaking as a part-time hobby. But starting end of 2011, I began to do this full-time until now.
That's wonderful. As a follow-up question to that, you obviously have been in the tech space a long time. So obviously the internet has been a big part of your life for quite some time. Do you remember at what age the internet became an integral part of your daily life? And was that when you were based in the US or China?
You know, when I first moved to the US, there was something called email. So that was so fascinating to us, you know, my fellow friends coming all the way from China. We were all very poor back in the 1990s. We could afford to call each other every week. So we were sending each other emails. That was very fascinating, very early stage. You had to use the Unix prompt to send out Unix command to send out emails. So even back then, because I was in academia, email was always a big part of the communication.
And I always have to ask people when they talk about email or doing things online pre-2000, what color was the screen when you were using Unix for email? Was it orange, green, or another color?
I think the screen was always black. It's the letters.
Okay.
Those were green. Just remember the Matrix. It's the little things that are green, not the background. The background is always black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. At university in the late 90s, our screens were, I want to say they were orange, and then the text was black. It was really hard to work with. I'm really glad that the World Wide Web developed when it did.
Yeah.
Shannon, how about you? Your first online or email experience, was it on like what we would consider like a normal looking screen or a different color?
I remember what Hal was talking about the black with green, but I think it was normal. I was doing sort of chat rooms in university and then email, but email was, I'm trying to remember what it was at that time. It definitely wasn't Gmail. I guess that was like AOL, probably maybe the first one. And then university, same as a lot of people. I think a lot of us got online first, through universities some way, or like a tech job kind of before it hit the general public. So all three of us, I think, were in the early days of the internet.
We're the pioneers.
Too funny. Well, what inspired you to switch over in 2011 to doing documentaries? Was there anything specifically that inspired you to do that?
It wasn't. I didn't switch in one go. When I moved back to China in 2004, I actually took a year and a half break from my tech career to started writing screenplays and doing documentary films. And then after a while, after I burned through my savings, I went back to the tech, in tech industry to make some money again. So anyway, so it's a back and forth a couple of times. I had always been interested in storytelling ever since I was growing up in China in like middle school and high school, but never got a chance to. So it's just kind of random because sometimes when we make choices in life, it's not because we consciously choose to do this versus that. For example, before I moved back to China, I spent 2 years in LA and I met many filmmaker friends and everybody was writing a screenplay. And then at that time, I thought I could write a screenplay too. That's how I got into this. But then I realized it was so hard to actually write a screenplay, getting the screenplay produced. And then I just picked up the camera, started filming. So that was 2004, 2005. And then I went back to tech for a number of years and quit into the end of 2011.
Was there anything you were doing online in China before you moved at 20 years old to the U.S.?
No, there wasn't anything. There wasn't internet. Wait, I moved to the U.S. when I was 1992. I don't think the internet went to China in 1997, 1998, right? Yeah. So there wasn't any internet back then.
Now, would you describe yourself more as a consumer of internet content, a creator of internet content, or both equally?
I think I'm more a consumer of internet content versus a producer of internet content. Obviously, all my films can be found online, but my films haven't become sort of like hits, right? Online hits. So not as many people are watching it and leaving me comments for me to communicate with them. Versus like I consume a lot of content on Netflix, HBO Go, and Hulu, for example, and YouTube, obviously.
I'm curious, do you, now having the documentary career and having some films that have gotten a lot of attention, maybe in more traditional media, has that changed how you kind of interact? Do you feel like you're more of I don't know if you want to call it a personality or like a brand online? And do you even have help? Do you have people to help with that at all? Or do you still just do the interaction yourself, like on Twitter or Weibo or wherever you are online?
Yeah, I mean, I still primarily do everything myself. I don't have anybody help. I'm not a personality. I'm not a brand, for sure. The first thing is that I make foreign language films and try to distribute them in the U.S. I think, as you two are probably aware of, in the U.S., not as many people really are that interested in foreign language content, period, right? Unless you become a Oscar winner, best foreign films at that level. So, I don't have a lot of followers on social media. And I haven't been that proactive in kind of establish my fan base online because, during the process of making People's Republic of Desire, for a while, I actually thought about quitting Facebook, quitting Twitter, because I would just become so wary of the dependency on the, especially I was following some internet celebrities in China's live streaming world, and they were really not very happy with their lives. But then what kept me still on social media is because I'm an independent filmmaker. I have a film I have to promote. So I kind of have to be on Facebook and Twitter.
Right. You're kind of forced into it. I imagine you probably, depending on what you're doing, use different languages online. What languages do you use online, and which times you're using Chinese versus English online?
Yeah, it's very interesting because right now I travel quite often back to China. For some strange reason, as soon as I go back to China, my internet consumption behavior changes. For example, obviously I use WeChat all the time, right? To communicate with friends in China, family in China. But in terms of the kind of news app I access, I read, and the kind of video app I use, when I'm in China, I'm more like a typical Chinese internet consumer. I use Toutiao, I use Tencent Video, right? And and I also check out Tieba every once in a while. And obviously it's Douban. But when I'm in the US, I use the New York Times, I use BuzzFeed. It's complete, almost like there's a parallel universe. I have to, whenever I go to a different country, I just switch to the other universe on.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have a clear answer for that. I think partly it's definitely because the Great Firewall. Once I'm in China, I don't have easy access to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Netflix, right? That's part of the reason. But I don't think the online environment really exists in isolation from the real world per se.
Right.
Whenever I go to China, just because you talk to the cab driver or you meet up with some friends from childhood, and what people are talking about, you kind of want to go do some research online to be able to grasp what's happening in China in the real world. So that's why it depends on where I travel to. I try to switch both my real world experience as well as my online immersion to fit where I am.
Right. Do you feel like your online and offline lives are equally balanced in both places?
How do you define balanced?
That one doesn't overtake the other? That's a good question.
I honestly think I spend way too much time on my phone. But my only excuse is that I spend a lot of time editing my film. With
on
editing.
Your phone?
No, not on my phone. Just like in general, when I'm editing, there's always sometimes I have to wait 1 or 2 minutes.
Sure.
For the render to complete. So what can I do with that 1 to 2 minutes? I go on Facebook, either on the computer or on my phone to check out what's happening among my friends.
Yes. I use the same excuse when I edit podcasts. Yeah. When I reached out to you, I mentioned that Shannon and I had both seen the live screening of the People's Republic of Desire a couple of months ago in Shanghai. And we both left with tons of questions. And for days after, we're going back and forth on WeChat to each other, going, what about this? What about this? What about this? And that's the whole reason why we reached out. And we really appreciate you doing this interview. So let's switch over from how the virtual person to how the documentarian switch hats if we can. And we'll probably veer back and forth as we do because there's no distinct, dividing point. But before we do that, have you ever live streamed yourself?
No, I think the only time I was on live stream was when I was filming Big Lee. He liked to brag to his fans that CCTV is making a film about him. He would lie to his fans that I'm a reporter from CCTV. And then he would turn the webcam at me, so I will appear in front of his fans, live fans. But I never live stream myself.
Would you ever? I
don't think so. I'm more like a behind the camera kind of guy. If anything, I could become the the evil big brother behind the scene. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to be the one performing.
Right.
I kind of like to control things. And I just feel like a lot of times when I'm in front of a camera, I kind of lose control.
Yeah, I'm curious with all of the different activity. There's so much going on online on the Chinese internet. Why did you decide to focus on live streaming specifically?
I started making this film in 2014, so that was before live streaming really took off. Very few people in first-tier cities have heard of live streaming. What intrigued me back then was because I had always wanted to make a film about the rich people in China, but the reality is that very few rich people want to be on camera, right? Want to be interviewed, be followed around by a camera. But then somebody was mentioning about this virtual live streaming world where the rich Tuhao and the poor Diaosi, they all party together. So that really intrigued me. And as soon as I did some research and found out that the Tuhao, the rich patrons, they really spend tons of money just like to show off virtually and anonymously. That to me is just like so fascinating. That to me, in many ways, represents what's happening in China today, in my humble opinion. So that kind of like got me going. So I want to find out more about this world. For a while, I thought live streaming was just a fad. So I was rushing to finish the film. I was like, I hope that live streaming is still there by the time I finish this film. So it's kind of lucky for me that live streaming really exploded back in 2016. Even though right now it's not as trendy as before, I think that's also because it has become so mainstream in China.
Has anything replaced it in popularity?
Yeah, definitely short video, right? TikTok.
Oh, right.
TikTok yeah. These are what everybody's talking about worldwide now.
Is there a monetary component to that? I haven't checked that out too much yet.
I think they're still trying to figure out how to monetize. I mean, with the TikTok and the Kuaishou, the short video, I think they're still trying to figure out whether their business model can be supported just by traditional sponsorship and advertising. They're still trying to figure that thing out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to a friend about, a very young friend in China about YY and some of the live streaming, and she was like, and she mentioned, of course, the short videos and TikTok. And then I started delving into that a little bit with her about how they make money. And she said it seems a lot of it too is like the idea of being discovered to lead to something else. Mm-hmm. So I guess like every other form of, online. So someone hears you doing a lot of people go on there and do songs and that kind of stuff. And then they get the chance to have more fans and get asked to perform somewhere. So it's ever evolving, I guess.
Yeah, so right now for short video, there are two top apps, TikTok and Kuaishou. I know Kuaishou is trying to encourage the KOLs on its platform to start doing live streaming because the live streaming has a clearly defined business model. And the live, whoever does the live streaming on Kuaishou can make a lot of money and the platform can take a huge cut. But with the other sponsorships, advertising, they can still make money, but it's not going to be as fast or as lucrative as live streaming.
I'm still fairly new to all of this terminology. Is KRL the same thing as influencer, or are they different?
I think so. I mean, KRL it's a term that people in Asia use a lot, right? People in the US, I don't think people in the US use that term.
Okay.
It's like key opinion leader. Yeah.
Okay.
You hear it in business a lot, like branding. Like if you want someone to talk about your product, I think.
Right.
But I hear it mainly in Asia. I hear influencer in the US.
Okay. Yep. Well, how this rich talking to the poor in live streaming? What is that the only place? One of the few places that has happened in China, and why is it so important?
It's not necessarily important. I think it's just fascinating to me because I really want to do a story about the class divide in society, but I want to do it in a fun way rather than in a heavy-handed way of a social commentary. It fascinated me is that when the rich and poor get together, what's going to happen? Because in real life, they will never mingle, right? You will never be able to observe it, but online they're together.
I just wonder about the rich and the poor. They talk to each other. Are they talking? Because it looked like a lot of money going in different direction. Well, mostly in one direction. But as far as the talking part of it, is that the offline component, like what the host might when they might meet with the two house afterwards or whatnot? Is that the talking part of it?
Even in the live streaming chat room, they talk to each other, but mostly it's the fans will type like, "I admire you. You're so awesome," and the rich to how get a huge ego satisfaction. But they can also add each other privately on YY. They can even exchange WeChat contacts with each other. WeChat, there are so many WeChat groups, right? I mean, a rich patron can start his or her own WeChat groups, have a huge following. They can have a huge social media following in that way. And then in those WeChat rooms, I think there's more definitely back and forth interaction. But overall, it's about the poor adore the rich, give them hongbao, red envelopes every once in a while on WeChat.
Oh, wow. So not just the host has WeChat groups, but the Patreons themselves have WeChat groups where they talk to the people watching the hosts also?
Primarily, it's the hosts' WeChat groups where the Tuha will be super active, right? They are almost like the admin level control. And then other, diehard fans will be there as well. But sometimes the Tuha, the rich patrons, they can start their own WeChat groups. Sorry, it's complicated. They can start their own groups on YY. Yeah. And also they can move the group to WeChat or some other social media platform as well. Because once you spend a lot of money, you become a celebrity in that space.
Right. So I love the triangle that Shenman talks about during the documentary, where she shows the host at the top. I'll basically just use the English terms: the loser on one side, the Patreon on the other side. So those are the three things. And then eventually she talks about the agencies that start to overtake them in the middle. And the interactions between all four of those populations is so fascinating.
Yep, that's why live streaming is successful, because live streaming, the platforms, they found a way to really design features that can appeal to the different roles' needs, how to satisfy their needs online. But also they design this kind of revenue flow that everybody can take a cut in the revenue flow, and everybody has an incentive to invest in the host's future income or profitability. So that's how live streaming has increasingly become a money game.
Well, since we're talking about money in this documentary, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not asking you for money. I do have a support page on stephfuccio.weebly.com, but that's not what this announcement is for. What I want instead of money, believe it or not, are more listeners, more people just like you who are interested in this conversation that we're having about people moving around geographically and what that does to their online selves. Do they change their online personas when they change countries? I don't know. Do you know? How did they change it? Let's investigate that some more. And by some more, listeners like you. So please do send virtual expats in any way, shape, or form. Email, Twitter, Facebook. Where else? Tumblr. Snapchat? Is that still around? If you're in China, WeChat, Weibo. And I'm losing my track of social media apps. You get the idea. Please do share virtual expats in just word form, picture form, sound form. Send a voice message to a friend. Say, you have to listen to Virtual Expat. That would be fantastic. Whatever you do, however you do it, I appreciate you. Yes, you, and you, and you, and you. Thank you so much. Let's get back to how.
After the documentary, I think a lot of people were asking about, China, this is so interesting, what's happening in China, and kind of really pointing out the very China-ness of this. And you were saying, well, actually, a lot of these similar things happen in the U.S. or, quote unquote, Western countries. So that there's such diversity and difference within China. But a lot of times, I guess, people are sort of pitting, like, China's so different.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, even when I was trying to get funding support from PBS, PBS has this concern as well. It's like, is this film trying to kind of give the U.S. audience the same stereotypical views about China again? But I think for me, any piece of great art will tell a very particular story. Hopefully, that particular story will also be able to convey something more, not universal is the wrong word. It's like more representative of what's really happening in the society, right? So if you look at People's Republic Desire, the group of people that's being portrayed in the film, the host, the loser fans, as well as the rich patrons, they by no means represent the entire society of China, because live streaming, as compared to short video or even Weibo or WeChat, live streaming's consumption in China is comparatively, dominated by people with lower education, people who really have no hope in terms of advancing their economic well-being and social status in the current Chinese society. So in that way, live streaming is not representative of what's happening in China. But on the other hand, this intense focus on money, equating success and happiness with money, and the people who have money wanting to show off, and the poor wanting to become those rich people. So in some way, this is kind of what's happening in China today, as China going through this huge social economic change. So yeah, I mean, that's why I said, and during one of the Q&As, is that I don't think this film represents China, but hopefully it can be indicative of what's happening in China to some degree.
So it's almost a mirror image, kind of what's happening in real life China.
No, I think it's more extreme image.
Sure,
it's an extreme image, but the even though it's extreme, it contains certain kernels of truth.
Well, that sounds like the internet.
Yes, yeah. Well, another thing you had mentioned in another interview, and I think we also heard a little discussion of in the talk, was that the YY in particular, the live streaming platform that was featured in People's Republic of Desire, was also, in not being a complete reflection of society, it was much more male-based. There were a lot more men viewers, and because it started as, I guess, related to gaming, a gaming platform. I don't know if you know if that's still true, or if that kind of covers, if that's true for live streaming in general, and how you think maybe that impacts, what we see in the film and how it relates to the overall society.
I think YY is arguably, probably, I don't have access to all the financials over the different live streaming platforms in China, but I still think YY is the most profitable live streaming platform in China. And even though, because its origin as a voice tool for online gamers, so a lot of YY's early fan base was migrated over from those gamers, tend to be more male and lower income. But I think in some ways, YY is still representative of the live streaming world in China, because YY was the first one that clearly established a business model to make live streaming platforms profitable. So all the latecomers, they're all trying to replicate what YY did well, which is trying to attract hosts and then trying to get them to attract, the big patrons. In the US, they're called whales, the patrons who spend a lot of money online. The newer live streaming platform, they just try to replicate what YY does. So to some degrees, yes, they are just become clones of YY, even though each one has slightly different, user demographics, and the revenue split or how they design their game rules are slightly different. But overall, they're very similar.
One of the most interesting parts of People's Republic of Desire for me was watching the fans like Yong and their urban alienation, and how they found like a comfort space or a home or what have you in Big Lee's live streams, and the community they found of other viewers who also liked watching him, and they felt like they were rooting for him and all of that kind of stuff. I couldn't help but think, as someone who analyzes the expat bubble and adjustment periods when people move outside their home country, which feels very similar when you move from a very different city to a very different city in the same country, I can't help but wonder, did you hear of any of them that they stopped watching the live streams once they actually acclimated and felt more comfortable in their physical place?
During the time I was filming, I was, in terms of the migrant workers whom I followed, some of them really got into watching live streaming. A couple of them watch it just for fun every once in a while during the annual competition when there was a lot of money being thrown around. But these are the type who never really got into live streaming. I actually haven't witnessed anybody quitting watching live streaming altogether. I kept on asking Yong, I said, when are you going to quit watching live streaming? He said, whenever Big Lee stops performing. But Big Lee is still there making his money, so Yong is still watching him. But once again, for my film, because in my film, I really focus on two very successful live streamers, as well as their diehard fans, right? So these are not the average fans who just come in once a week, once a month to watch someone sing or Big Lee telling dirty jokes. These are the ones who spend every evening with their idols. So for them to really quit, it must be something majorly change in their life, personal life. For example, if they get married or if they have a girlfriend, they don't have time to watch live streamings anymore in the evenings.
Right. I wondered as I was watching it why Young didn't just take his phone and start live streaming himself. He seemed like a very personable, attractive young man, and I kept thinking, just go do it. You can make more than $400 a month. Go do it. Did he ever talk about the desire to be on the live stream?
We talk about it, but he knows. He knew back then that he didn't have what it takes to become a live streamer.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, I mean, I found it difficult to talk. Like we've been talking for 30 minutes now. I found it very challenging for me to keep on talking, even though I've been prompted with questions. Like for a live streamer, they have to just like ad-lib, right? Coming up with stuff to talk about for 1 to 2 hours straight. So that's really difficult.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder how does we saw in the film the talent manager and the whole setup as you talked about financially. How do people end up getting into it? I mean, is it something they feel like they have a talent for and they try, and then people are cultivated from there, or how does all that even begin?
So I think there are two kinds. I mean, in the early adopters, they kind of just fell into this. For example, Big Lee and Shen Man, they were among that generation who used YY as a voice tool to play online games. And then as the tool evolved into live streaming, they were there. So they were the first group of people who started doing live streaming, and they became really successful. So later ones who wanted to start doing live streaming mostly because they want to make money. They heard that live streamer makes so much money, so they wanted to try themselves. But, because they were not necessarily cut out for that, live streaming is very competitive. And if you really have to have some kind of talent, and also you need to be able to engage with your fans in real time. So not everybody can do it. Even if you're a great singer, if you don't know how to interact with the fans are going to leave you. So, yeah, it's really hard for newcomers to stay and grow their fan base and to become another top live streamers.
Yeah, it seems like people have this idea in a way that it's easy and, this easy way to get rich. But also, as you talked about it, I'm thinking that's a very difficult job. I mean, that is hard to have that. When you watched them doing it, it's amazing to think, and your film would show small segments, but to imagine them doing this for hours, that's not something everyone can do for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's why Big Lee, he used to, like to talk a lot. But nowadays, after he finishes his shows, he doesn't want to talk to anybody. He just wants to be quiet. It's kind of exhausting.
Sure.
Yeah,
I get that.
Makes sense. Yeah. So what's the reaction been to the documentary, and has it varied depending on where it's being viewed, which country or even city, or kind of the events that you've done some live talks?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. When I traveled to film festival with this film, I think the best response I received were from cities where there are large Chinese immigrant population or Chinese student population, because these are the ones who have heard of live streaming, who knew something about it but didn't know a lot. So when they watched my film, the film just resonated with them a lot. So I think for a non-Chinese audience, because live streaming is really not a mainstream internet phenomenon outside of China or maybe Korea. So people like the typical non-Chinese audience, they look at this, they will be shocked, but to them it's more like almost like an allegorical Black Mirror type of sci-fi story to them. It doesn't really resonate, right? So it's kind of unfortunate this film couldn't be publicly screened in China because of censorship reasons. But of the limited numbers of public screenings I did in China, the audience response was phenomenal in China.
And you mentioned this a little bit before, but I want to attack it head on. As you were making the documentary, did you find yourself using the internet and or social media differently? Because you mentioned you were thinking about quitting Facebook, but it sounds like you didn't. But what effect did it have on you?
I spent 2 years filming, following my characters. And then I spent a year and a half just editing. And kind of a few months into the editing process, I just realized this story is really a dystopian story. And I keep on watching and rewatching the footage of my characters struggling to be happy, even though they have made so much money and they're so popular online in China. So that kind of made me think of not wanting to be so dependent on social media for affirmation myself. Because whenever we post something on social media, we post in order to communicate, to be recognized. So there's always this desire for other people to like your post or leave a comment, to interact with you. But basically, as you know, as I spent more time making this film, I kind of wanted to get away from that desire of mine, wanting to be liked online. But in the end, as I mentioned before, as an independent filmmaker, I kind of have to rely on social media to engage with my fans and to get the word out there and to continue to promote the film. It's a little ironic sometimes when I think about it. But then, when I try to finish the Kickstarter campaign for this film, there were really a lot of people who came out and supported me, not only on Kickstarter campaign page, but also they tell their friends on social media. So I guess, that comes back to whatever we want to criticize, we shouldn't just dump everything out, because there's always a positive side as well. So because right now I feel like in the West, the media discussion about internet and social media has swung all the way to the other extreme, as if social media is all bad, right? It's very addictive. It's all echo chamber. But let's not forget, there's also some positive thing that has come with social media, with the internet.
Exactly. And I find that as I'm interviewing people about their online existence and the chronological aspect of it and things, and it's so amazing to me how many different good things that can come from it, and how many, and almost equally, how many dangerous aspects of it can happen. But I still lean towards the side of it's not the technology, it's something that we might have veered towards. Even if it wasn't available, it's just making it possibly easier for us to do, maybe.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But also today, there was news that WHO is convening a meeting to discuss whether to make online gaming, addiction to online gaming, one of mental illnesses, right? So once these tools becomes available, it's like anything that can easily be abused by people who have a desperate needs for it. So we all need to watch out for that.
And that brings up a really good question. The term desire, as I was watching the documentary, I was thinking, okay, is it the desire for money? Is it the desire for connection? And you were just saying it was the desire to, it sounds like what you just said was it is more of the desire of connection. But did you want the desire to have many different hats throughout the documentary, or did you have a specific desire in mind when you named it?
I think I stuck with that name. I wasn't very happy with that name. That's kind of like too big and too heavy. But I stuck with it because it's really hard to summarize what the desire, these live streaming fans and hosts are trying to get satisfied online. I just kind of like, the vagueness of that term, because it's like you said earlier, it's online is like a mirror, right? It basically reflects whatever desires we're looking to satisfy. I couldn't get satisfied in real life, and then we go online, seek the gratification for it. So it could be recognition, it could be relationship, it could be money, it could be fame. There are all kinds. Obviously, because it's China, if you look at the film, money plays a big it's a major component of this kind of desire being projected online. But I think there's still also like those poor fans, they just want to feel connected to their idols.
2 more quick questions for you.
I guess since we're wrapping up, what is something that you wish people or we would have asked about the documentary that you haven't been asked yet, or some final kind of comment on it that we haven't delved into?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a tricky one. No, I think you guys are asking all the right questions. I mean, you really got into the film. You like the film. You did, you've been in China for a while, so you understand the social context from which the story came about. So I think you guys are asking all the right questions.
Looking at the next generation of internet users, if there's anything specifically that you are thinking about teaching your own children about being good digital citizens or having that balanced offline life?
That's a tricky one. My kids are 3.5 years old.
They start young these days, I hear.
Yeah, I know. I just want to keep those away from them as long as I possibly can. It's so scary how much, especially like I know how phones can be addicted to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of worried about young kids growing up. I also observe my nieces, how much time they spend on their phone. They are in college, and right now they are on WeChat, on whatever app they're using all the time. They don't even bother to talk to adults anymore. So that to me is a little scary. I don't know. That's going to be a big challenge for me to deal with.
Teaching your children about that is a big project, but also from a professional perspective, I'm wondering if you would share a little bit about anything you're working on now.
Oh, yeah. I'm launching a 40-minute short film on Netflix on May 3rd. It's about my journey to have kids through surrogacy and bringing my quote-unquote modern American family back to meet my relatives in China. It's a personal documentary, and people will be able to start watching it on Netflix in May.
Is that the All in My Family one?
Yeah, All in My Family.
Wonderful. Okay, that's great.
Fantastic. Well, Hao, thank you so much for staying up and chatting with us binationally. It's funny, I was born in New York City, so we're kind of in each other's spaces.
Yeah, we're switching places right now.
Too funny. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Virtual Expats Podcast. I have so many thank yous about to come out of me. Are you ready for this? Thank you to Hao Wu, our wonderful guest and very, very talented documentarian. Also, thank you to our co-host for this episode, Shannon Martin. And you know what? I have to thank you, the listeners. It's because of you that I'm able to keep going, episode after episode. Also, I cannot forget the wonderful Damon Castillo, who has some concerts coming up in Central Coast, California. If you live in that area, check him out at damoncastillo.com. His link, of course, is going to be in the show notes. If you'd like to contact me for any reason, feedback, questions, or to be a guest on the show in the fall, do contact me anywhere. My handle is exactly the same at every single platform, STEPHFUCCIO. Thank you very much. More soon.
When I clock out of the hospital at 6 p.m., I'm not done for the night. That's when Gamer Nurse 40 clocks in, and she's got orcs to slay. Sure, I'm playing a 13-year-old in Scranton, but he's a level 53 mage with a filthy mouth, so I need to stay on top of my game. What'd you call me? That's when I crack open a Heineken 0.0. Zero alcohol, but just as refreshing. So I can focus on stealing his gold before his mom tells him it's bedtime. Take that, kids.
Heineken 0.0. 0.0% alcohol. Now you can. Must be 21 plus to purchase. Enjoy responsibly.
Change the way your business banks with a local team focused on your vision. At Truist Commercial, we roll up our sleeves to put our industry and strategic business advice to work for you. Learn more at truist.com. That's TRUIST.com.